condition? Is it being energized or not?
No.
Not energized.
Not
Normally closed.
energized.
Right on. Non-energized, closed. What about my vent solenoid?
Also closed.
Vent solenoid. Where's my vent solenoid?
It's off.
Normally open. So
So it's vented.
So guys, this is in its normal condition. There's nothing that's changed here, right?
Yeah.
My purge solenoid is normally closed, and it is closed right now. My vent is normally open, and it is open right now. Would everybody agree?
Yep.
So what's happening in my fuel tank?
It's being vented.
atmosphere pressure.
Atmosphere.
Should be
pressure.
atmosphere. So that's what we're doing here. Atmospheric pressure check. Our vacuum pump is off. These are the only things I've got to toggle, guys, is the purge, the vent, and the turning the pump off and on. Because this is doing it after the car's run, obviously I can't use engine vacuum, can I?
Because it's not on.
It's not on. So that is to make sure that we have atmospheric pressure in the fuel tank. If we don't go any further. There's no point in doing any further test. Abort. Okay. And remember, before any of this is done, it needs to see the enable criteria, right? Which we talked about a little earlier. And if the value isn't what the PCM expects to see, we could have either a sensor issue or maybe a vent issue for this vehicle.
So in this sequence check or the atmospheric check takes 10 seconds? It's
Yep.
doing this within 10 seconds?
Absolutely. It just, I mean, if those valves are in their normal position, guys, our fuel tank has got atmospheric pressure. It's not like it has to wait. The car's been sitting 5 hours. So we should see atmospheric pressure as soon as this test is done. So 10 seconds, done, boom. Is everybody clear?
Yeah.
Yep.
Is that
Let's
hard?
say one of those, sorry, if one of those parameters weren't met,
Yeah.
would it just stop the test already and just?
So what do you mean by one of the parameters isn't met?
Or if just like,
for the enable criteria or
yeah.
for the results of this first sequence?
The results of this first sequence, like if it doesn't,
Correct.
let's say the purge valve is open or closed.
Well, see, you know what? It wouldn't, honestly, it wouldn't matter, would it? If the purge valve was open, we'd still see atmospheric pressure because the car's not running.
Right.
If the vent valve were open or closed, it wouldn't matter because excuse me. If the vent valve were closed, we might see a higher pressure, right?
Right.
So basically, we're just making sure that this thing sees atmospheric pressure. If it doesn't, we set a code and abort the test.
Okay.
And then as technicians, we'll know, okay, well, it failed the atmospheric pressure test.
So it's not getting.
Okay, well, let's have a look. Well, we know it can't be the purge solenoid because the purge solenoid wouldn't care if it was open or closed because it's atmospheric either way.
Yeah.
So it has to be either a sensor or maybe vent path restrictions.
Okay.
Right. So maybe rip the line off the canister. Remember that line they were asking us to block off, take the vent line off and run the test. We can run these tests, and we will, by the way, run all these tests on this vehicle shortly.
Okay.
Okay. And then run the test. If the test passes this time, then I would say there's some restriction in that purge line, the vent line, sorry, not the purge line, the vent line that runs up to the fuel cap.
Okay.
So far, pretty simple, right?
Yeah.
Let's look at sequence B or stage 2. What are we doing to the purge valve now?
Still closed.
Still close.
Purge is closed still. Vent valve.
Still closed. Open.
Still open. Both are still non-energized. What do I do now? I activate the pump. We'll note that the pressure drops. Does that make sense? Because we're measuring the pressure here, right? I'm turning the vacuum valve on and my pressure is dropping. This is called reference pressure check. In this mode, gentlemen, in this mode, I can't draw on that screen. We're testing reference pressure. What happens to the pressure in the fuel tank when we draw our pump through a 20 thou orifice? Okay. Everybody with me?
Yep.
My vacuum pump is drawing because where's my vent valve? When my vent valve is normally open, the top of this tube is blocked off. So when my pump runs, it can only draw air through a 20 thou orifice. Well, that's going to be my reference value for this. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So it calibrates itself every time. It's going to store this value, guys. Whatever the pressure drops to in this slide, that value is stored. Okay? What the hell was that? So that takes a minute. It takes a minute for the pressure to drop down. PCM record that value. We then go to sequence C. So far, we haven't really done much, have we?
Nope.
So what changes in sequence C?
Vent valve
Purge
turned on.
closed, vent off. Vent closed.
The vent is closed. The purge is still closed, right?
Yes.
The pump is still on from sequence 2 or B. And what we're going to see here is we're going to see, because we're now exposing the entire fuel tank and system, that the pressure is going to rise. Whoever's got their thing going on, please let me know. Pressure rises here. And then on a good system, should drop below the pressure value that we measured with a 20 thou hole. So basically anything below this line here is a pass. Anything above that line, our reference check line that we did in stage 2, is a fail. Okay. So what we're seeing here is if it goes right back up to atmospheric pressure, that's a gross leak. Make
Guys,
sense?
Someone's mic is on. With the speakers on. We can hear Andrew's echo.
I have a question. How did you tell the purge and vent was on or off?
Good, great question. Those are my values right here. Purge vacuum switching valve.
Yeah.
Right in this position here, it's closed. And this position here, see where it says open? So off, 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 off through all those stages. Then it turns on here and then turns off over here. See it?
So where it's 10 seconds, it turned on, right?
After 10 seconds, the pump turned on.
Oh, I mean, at the back 10 seconds.
So back here, yeah, you can see what's going on. Exactly. So the only time the purge is turning on for this test purpose is for the last 10 seconds test for sequence D, which we haven't even looked at. The rest of the time, It's off.
Oh,
For the rest of the time, it's off or closed.
okay, okay. Now I get it.
Awesome.
Oh, I can see
The
that. Yeah,
fucking
okay. I was
section.
confused.
Yeah, I didn't see those. I was like, I was looking at the graph. I was like, how do you know if it's on or off? Doesn't make
Ah,
sense.
that does now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can see what we're doing. We're just manipulating the position of the valves and watching what happens with the pressure. So basically, guys, once I open the system up to the pump pressure, when the vent valve closes right at this point here, there's an initial pressure rise because I've now exposed the entire fuel tank to the pump. So the pressure is going to rise until it hits the whatever point it is. And that would depend maybe on how full the fuel tank is. And then we see the pressure start to drop again. On a good, oops, I didn't do that. On a good tank, the pressure is going to drop down below the reference rate. Are we good? Reference? Gross leak, it'll stay, or sorry, a small leak, it'll stay above that 20 thou reference. And a gross leak, it's going to go right to atmosphere, right?
Why does it drop below the standard?
Well, because this standard here was what my PCM measured a 20 thou inch hole, that orifice.
Yeah.
Right? So when my vent valve was open, when the
drops.
pump turns on, it's calibrating itself saying, okay, well, this is the pressure drop across a 20 thou orifice. We'll use this as our no-go number.
Okay, so it keeps venting
So
until it gets to
if
that
the
number.
pressure, that's right. So if the pressure goes below that number, we're good. If the pressure's above that number, we're bad.
So when it goes below that number, that means that the vent valve should open at some point, no?
I don't
At-
follow you, sorry.
Within the 12 minutes on the C scale.
Yep.
So when it's going below, first it builds up the pressure, right?
It drops the pressure. This is a vacuum pump. This pressure here is, guys, is atmospheric. And where to get this number from? You got that number from test 1, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
This number here is our calibrated 20 thou leak. And our pressure is low. So when I drop the pressure in the tank, I don't want to see the pressure rise above to atmosphere or even rise above that 20 thou gap. That's my go, no-go level.
What if it drops more?
It's gonna be pretty much calibrated to the pump itself. The pump's probably going to dictate exactly how low the pressure could go.
Okay.
Okay, so that'll be in the design of it, but we're not going to, I mean, there's nothing really physically that could cause my pressure to drop lower than that. Okay, I'm looking for leaks. So if I have a leak, the pressure will rise, not drop lower.
Yeah.
One caveat here, guys, is this test, when the vehicle does it, it must happen within 12 minutes. It must see these pressure changes. If the pressure changes isn't happening fast enough, we've got a small leak. Or maybe you're running this test with an empty fuel tank and you're running the test, not the PCM. Obviously, if I have much greater area to drop the pressure inside my fuel tank, it's going to take a lot longer. That's why we have enable criteria saying the tank must be between 15 and 85%. Are we clear?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've done our leak test, guys. Obviously, if you have any concerns here, it's going to restore a code. The last sequence, actually there's 5 sequences. One just reestablishes our atmospheric pressure again. But here we go. Here's our purge flow test, guys. we are now doing stage D. And in stage D, what changes?
Purge
is
valve.
on.
So what should happen when we open the purge valve? What should happen to my pressure?
It should increase.
Rises.
Not just rise,
Atmosphere.
should be atmospheric,
Go to atmosphere, yeah.
right? Right back to that pressure value that we had during our basic make sure the fuel tank's vented stage, right? So that pressure should pop right back up there, and you can see that it does. So we know that our vent valve is working because we have atmospheric pressure. We know, and by the way, we do this test again. Once we got all this back in place again, we are testing it right here, right? We're back to atmospheric. If we had vent path restrictions, this test might not be the same. So we're checking the vent valve to make sure it doesn't have restrictions. We're checking the vent valve to make sure it's not leaking when we're doing this test here. We're checking the purge valve for flow. We're checking the purge valve, sorry, for leaks when we're doing our leak test. So we've done it all, right? The PCM has completed all these tests without us even knowing it's going on while it's sitting in the garage 5 hours after we shut the car off.
When the vacuum valve, the vacuum pump, sorry, work against your purge valve?
Well, look at the condition of the vacuum pump here. Is it on still? Vacuum pump is on,
Yes.
but it, my friend, is a tiny little pump.
Okay.
That has-
And then it
it-
goes to atmosphere and turns off.
Yep. It's just going to rise to
No,
atmosphere.
I mean when it's rising.
One thing
like-
we'll discover, Abraham, is the rise that you see here is somewhat gradual. And the reason that rise is gradual is because this is pulse width modulated purge valve.
Yeah.
So it doesn't just
Mm.
open, it pulse width modulates open and watches the pressure rise.
So it compensates also for the vacuum. From the vacuum.
Well, like I say, opening the purge valve is going to overcome that little vacuum pump.
Yeah.
If that purge valve is open, my vacuum pump run all the time, I would see atmospheric pressure all the time. It'd be like having a loose gas cap, right?
Oh, okay.
How we doing, guys?
Oh, because it has that just small orifice that is,
It's only
Right.
pulling that orifice during
Yeah.
one part of the test.
so the purge valve.
Only doing that pulling it through the orifice in this part of the
Yeah.
test here. The rest of the time, it has direct contact with the surface area of the fuel tank with no restriction.
Mhm.
But like I say, the pump is no match for a atmospheric leak.
Mhm.
And if our pressure doesn't rise, guys, obviously we got a purge valve issue or a restriction issue in the purge line, right?
Yeah.
I did point this out to you guys earlier. So if I do discover I have a leak on a Toyota vehicle, what I'm going to want to do here is block off that purge, or sorry, the vent valve, excuse me, at the back of the vehicle. And this is my setup. I don't have it on right now because I want to run the rest of the test first, but I've just found a cap that fits nicely over top. So I've disconnected the purge, or the vent line that goes up to the fuel cap area with a filter on it, and put my nice little rubber cap over top and sealed the system off. Okay. The only thing, the caveat with doing this is if I put that cap on, I don't know if the vent valve is working, but Toyota's procedure is if there's no leaks before and it fails its test, then replace the canister because you'll get a new valve and everything else along with it. Couldn't be easier. How many
That
of you guys
must be
use?
expensive though.
Last time I replaced one was about $400 or $500. It's been a few
Yeah,
years.
your cost, right?
I can't remember. I think if I remember correctly, it was just under $500 retail.
Oh, okay.
but it's also probably been 8 years since I've replaced one.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the cost is right now.
What the current, yeah. Okay, no worries.
Guys, we're gonna look at this test later on as well. We'll actually hook up a smoke machine, block off the system, and we'll go through those procedures as well. But the first thing I want to do here, guys, is I want to bring Snap-on into the meeting. I want to hook up to this vehicle. I want to get into it. I want to look at some of the PIDs that we can see through the system. I'll just kind of give you guys a quick rundown of the setup that we've got here. I'll try and stay as steady as I can. So here's our victim. You can see the green test cap here. There's our test port under the hood, easy to access. And then of course, right there is our purge valve. You'll note that my test port is on the tank side or the canister side of the purge valve. Okay. So there's not much else under the hood with my evap system. Really common, guys, on some of these vehicles that when air cleaners are inspected, sometimes these hoses get taken off or removed. And if they do, obviously you're going to have, leaks.
Code.
And pretty easy with the visual inspection for this stuff. So you want to check and make sure everything's there, connected up properly. My purge line, where does it go? And I kind of, it ends up right there. Okay. So have a good look at all that stuff. Make sure the hoses aren't damaged. If the hose is damaged between my intake manifold and the purge valve, I'm going to have a pretty major vacuum leak. And I would probably have codes set for lean air fuel trims rather than evap codes. Okay, so that's my setup there. I've got this thing hooked up to a small battery charger because we'll have the key on for quite a period of time. In order for me to run this test, guys, I have to have my key in the on position so I can establish communication with the PCM. When the PCM does this itself, it doesn't fire everything up. My cluster doesn't turn on, all the rest of the stuff doesn't turn on, so it doesn't sap my battery at night. But it will abort the test as soon as the battery level gets too low. So here's our setup over here. I got a camera to help us keep an eye on things. I've got Snap-on who will join the party momentarily. I've got this is my leak tamer. This is my leak tester, my smoke machine that I've owned for, I don't know, 20 years or so. And it literally just failed on me last night when I was setting this thing up. The alligator clip had a broken connection on it, so I connected it directly to my battery. I've got a separate battery for this thing on another charger for the smoke machine. What you guys may discover, and it might just be mine, but the school one does it as well, come to think of it, is these things suck power, man. So if you connect this thing up to the vehicle's battery, you might find that after 15 or 20 minutes of smoking that the battery's dead. So I like to connect it up to a separate battery and a separate charger when I can. And then I've got another computer here for keeping an eye on you guys. The tools and equipment we're going to use today, I've got my little plug that we'll put in when we get ready to smoke this car. I need Schrader valve tools. I've got an adapter for my smoke machine, which will connect to the Schrader port. I have another purge solenoid we can do some testing on to see how that works. For testing a purge solenoid, it's really handy to have a vacuum pump. If we need any specifications for temperature, I've got that, and we've got a full assortment of our fused jumper leads. Of course, our DVOM, because it follows me everywhere. As far as the vehicle goes, same vehicle, well, not the same vehicle. I don't know if we've worked on this one yet. This happens to be my wife's car. She was very kind to loan it to me. The reason I'm using this one over the Matrix, I've had the line off the fuel tank a couple times before. And I know it's going to come off for us without breaking it. So guys, I think the first thing I want to verify.
Who guess?
Yep.
Fuel level.
Fuel level's good.
Fuel
Yeah.
level, right? I'm not going to bother unless this fuel level's between whatever it tells me. I said book says 15 to 85, right? That's a book spec. This might have a very different specification for it. Okay, I'm also going to go and look at my Christmas tree, make sure everything's lit up properly in the bulb check, start it up, make sure everything shuts off. I'm not going to shut this thing off just yet. Or sorry, I'm not going to start this thing up just yet. Visual inspection. Sorry for the jiggly, trying to keep it as straight as I can. I'm going to get to the back of the vehicle here. Look at the fuel cap, right? It clicks. It certainly didn't feel loose. This fuel cap, guys, just so you know, is one of those quarter turn caps. So no threads. Far easier for a customer not to cross thread, right? So far better chance of getting a good seal in there. And the other thing we'll get under here and look at is where the canister is located. And there is my filter. The vent filter box right there, and my canister is in behind that. So it's kind of in a shitty spot.
Yeah.
Right, so there's some of the lines I'm gonna have to disconnect to get at it. You can see some of the bits and pieces there. So it's kind of in a shitty spot as far as corrosion and whatnot, and I have seen these things really rotted. Obviously the plastic on the canister itself, obviously I got an exhaust hose on here. I have my safety boots, I have my safety glasses. Yeah, I've seen the canister, all the metal rotted out on these things, but the plastic canister itself obviously isn't prone for rust. So that's our orientation, guys. The next thing I'll do is get Mr. Snap-on to show us the data stream for this thing. So please make sure you keep your cameras off for me. So there's just this weird anomaly that happens when I share my Snap-on screen with you guys, is that the scan tool module doesn't show up.
Oh.
Okay, so those guys are familiar with the Snap-on here. You'll notice that right here is where my scan tool module lives. I can still hit it with my touch screen, but it just doesn't show up.
That's weird.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird things. It's because this thing doesn't have enough RAM and whatnot, so it just kind of barely gets along. I have my screen set up here, guys, so that I don't have a ton of different options. I'm basically only using this thing for 2 or 3 different cars here, so it gives me an option of Chevrolet or Toyota. Obviously, if I hit the full list icon at the top there, it would give me every vehicle. So I'm going to go into Toyota here. I trust that you guys are all probably pretty fluent in this stuff, right? Looking up to a vehicle, this one does support automatic ID. I like that. It's less opportunity for me to cause an issue for entering the wrong information. Where do we get our vehicle year information?
VIN number?
In?
What about the door label, VECI label, or the door label? It actually gives me the production date. Isn't that the best place to get it?
Ah! No, because production dates can, depending on manufacturer, stop after a certain point. Some manufacturers, they consider it like after the 10th month, the next year. then before it. They're
Yes.
kind of weird. Yeah.
Absolutely. Remember, guys, go to the 10th VIN. Don't rely on any other information. Okay. I've even seen a ICBC form with the wrong year on the vehicle.
They did
Okay.
that to me twice.
Where do we want to go from here, guys?
Full scan.
Code scan. Great idea. We can see if this thing's got any codes in it. I wonder if the codes are still left over. Oh, maybe I do that, guys. I can tip my hat to you guys. Okay. I'm not going to go to code scan. I'm going to say that we've scanned this vehicle, and I'm going to say that we have a small leak code. What is that, a 456? I'm going to select engine. This is an automatic transmission. I like this car because it is automatic. The other one I steal from my daughter is a manual, and it's a pain in the ass. So here's what we've got, guys. Codes, clear codes, data display, check mode. What's check mode?
Is that a Mote 6 we're talking about?
No, I'll find that under generic functions, and we'll talk about that soon. But check mode is a function of Toyotas. You know, do you guys understand a lot of our codes need to be seen more than once before it'll turn on a check engine light? Gets rid of nuisance codes. Check modes allows the check engine light to come on in the first trip failure for diagnostic purposes. Actuator tests. This is where I might find cylinder balance tests, output tests for lots of things. Purge VSV, all that sort of stuff might be an actuator test. Obviously, I think we want to go to our evap system check, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this test activates. I'm going to go back for a second here, guys. And I'm going to go into actuator tests here. And I'll just show you what we can see from here. So this is what I can control, actuator tests. So AC clutch, I can switch that off and on, bidirectional tests. We've got some cool stuff we'll talk about later. Tank pressure bypass vacuum switching valve, evap vacuum switching valve alone. But you know what? Do you guys see anything in here that says vent valve or purge valve?
No.
No. So you might have to do a little research. What we'll discover here is that where it says evaporative vacuum switching valve alone, this is going to be our purge valve. And this drives me crazy how slow this thing is. Evap VSV. Again, if you don't know which VSV they're talking about, vacuum switching valve, the trick is they're talking about vacuum here. I'm going to get to the test here. Extremely slow. You can see what it gives me here. It gives me all these PIDs that I can look at while I'm activating the vacuum switching valve. But what I want to do here is I just want to turn this on. You guys hear that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got my mic right over the valve and I'm listening to the valve. And the clicking you're hearing is it's pulse width modulating our purge solenoid for us. Okay. I have to kind of guess what I'm pushing there because it doesn't show up on my screen. So I can't check the purge valve on this vehicle. That's all I can do. After that, we're dead in the water. So I'm going to exit out of the screen here, guys, and I want to get to the meat of this. I want to just run through the evap system test that we've got. Okay, so back out of here. This is fairly unique, just as you know, guys. A lot of vehicles, we cannot force an evap test. Parking brake applied, transmission in park, ignition on, engine not running, fuel temp below 95 Fahrenheit, fuel level between 1/4 to 3/4 of a tank. I think we've satisfied all of those parameters, okay? Continue. And by the way, guys, if it says parking brake on, sometimes it's actually monitoring the parking brake switch and it won't run the test with it on, without it on. Okay, careful. To prevent damage to the system, the scan tool will automatically stop the vacuum pump when the pressure drops to minus 39.8 millimeters of mercury. Okay, so yeah, it wants to make sure we're not going to damage anything in the system. Now, to me, the fuel cap should take care of that, but I guess they don't want to take a chance. It also says do not operate vent valve and vacuum pump continually for more than 15 minutes at a time. All right, I think we can handle that. Again, we're in control, so we got to be careful here. Now, note here, look at note 4. What are they doing to me?
It's different from before.
It's different values, but we're still okay. We're still between 1/2 and 9/10 of a tank, right? We're just a little under 3/4.
They should just use percentages. I don't know.
I know. I know. I know. And, you know, when you say that, it is frustrating because, again, sometimes the labeling is different than we expect and the textbook talks about. You have to kind of learn what they're doing. You know, when you're familiar with the brand, it obviously makes it much easier because you kind of already know the lingo. Okay. So it's wanting me to turn the key off for 10 seconds. Do not apply brake pedal. So I'm just going to reach into the car and turn the key off for 10 seconds.
Is this the stage A you're talking about? 10 seconds?
We haven't even got there. Nope.
No. Oh.
Nope. This is just getting the system up and going. Okay, so I've turned the key off. 8, 9, 10. I'm going to hit continue. Turn the key on. Do not start engine. Back in the car. Key back on again. Make sure my dash is lit up like a Christmas tree. We're all good. Do not apply brake pedal, continue. Again, brake pedal might just abort everything, so pay attention to the instructions. All right. Here's what it's done, guys. It's looking at sequence A right now. Initial vapor pressure sensor is reading 0.330 right now. It'll jump around. It might go to 1.65. Guys, this is 0.16 inches of mercury. Oh, sorry, millimeters of mercury. This is a very, very low pressure value. So it's fluctuating by about 1/3 of a millimeter of mercury. So that's just normal pressure change, guys. This is my atmospheric value. Okay.
Okay.
Notice that it says gauge. So gauge is, we've talked about this. Gauge, we understand, means that atmospheric pressure at 14.7 equals 0. So we're starting at 0. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, not starting at absolute 0. I'm going to hit continue here. We now have our value. So we just completed sequence A. Okay, step 1 is done, guys. Clear?
Yeah.
Yep.
Vacuum off.
And it's going to spit us out a nice little report here, right? So again, stage 1, look at that form. We had the vent valve was open. The purge valve was closed. The pump was off, just checking to see that we have atmospheric pressure in the tank, and we are totally good. Remember, now we're doing the reference pressure check. Now we're going to turn the vacuum pump on. Our valves stay in the same position, and we're going to draw, well, pressure vacuum through that orifice. So
We're
I'm gonna
drawing vacuum, right? For this one?
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry guys. Hang on. Wait a sec. We are drawing vacuum, correct. I want to make sure I didn't go too fast here. I did. I want to go back out of here, guys. I apologize. I accidentally went over that too fast. I'm going to begin the test again. I'm too impatient to wait 10 seconds, but I will. Okay, so we're just going to repeat step 1. I skipped over step 2. You guys didn't get a chance to see it. Okay, so we're seeing that number again. We're okay. We're going to hit continue here. We have our Okay, so what's happening right now, guys, is the vacuum pump is on. We're drawing it through the orifice, and we have a value here. The value that we see on my screen becomes the pass-fail mark. The pressure level that if we go below this, we're good. If the pressure is above this, it's a fail. So 22.6 millimeters of mercury is the pressure drop across that 20 thou hole. So guys, somebody write this number down for me. We're going to need this number and the previous one.
An example of above would be negative 25, right?
No, the other way. Excuse me. Let me restate that. An example of a fail would be below this value, be 21 or 19.
Yeah.
Okay. A pass would be 23, 24, 25.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you for
So
clarifying.
this number is a little bit low.
Is this number low?
No, you just said
No.
below 23, 24, right?
I'm saying that any number below this value is a fail.
This is a
So
reference.
closer to atmosphere.
This is my reference check. We're drawing vacuum through the 20 thou orifice. So the 22, and it's just bouncing around a little bit. It's 22.7, 22, whatever. Any value that is, say, 21 or 20 or 19, those are all fail numbers.
Okay, so closer to
25, 30. Yes, closer to 0 is a fail. Higher numbers, 25, 26, 27, those would be pass. That's my pass fail mark. So write that number down. Now we're actually going to go on to
Will be activated in the vacuum reading will gradually increase. Okay.
what we're going to do next, guys, is we're going to see the pressure. We're opening the fuel tank up to the pump now. We're not just going through the orifice, and we're going to see the pressure change. We want to see the pressure below 22.7. Okay, we've exposed the entire fuel tank to the vacuum pump. You saw what happened there. The pressure rose again, right? Went back to atmosphere when we opened that, when we opened up the
Vent.
valve, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So the vent valve is now blocking and also exposing the entire fuel tank to the pump, not just that calibration orifice. And we see our pressure is slowly dropping. Minus 6.9. Minus 7. This is the one that we can't go beyond 12-minute test on. So guys, what do we know already?
It's holding pressure, vacuum.
Right. So what can I already eliminate?
That the valve is okay.
A gross leak. If the pressure didn't change, or we'd know we have a gross leak. If it stayed at 0 or approximately that value we got on the first test, which was pretty much 0.000 or 0.165 inches, millimeters, excuse me, of mercury.
So we'd have a massive leak.
Right. So that is our baseline for what the fuel tank pressure should read. And we're seeing that pressure rise now. Where are we at? 14. Where do we need to get to, guys?
22.7.
22.7. So if we stopped right here, how are we doing?
No good.
Bad,
No.
bad, bad.
Fail, 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 right?
Yeah.
It's funny seeing like a negative number go up because usually that means it's like not.
Yeah, I hear you. But yeah, we're creating negative pressure though, right?
Yeah.
So I could have positive inches of, or millimeters, I keep saying inches, millimeters of mercury. I could have positive numbers, but that would be pressure. And that would be a bad
Right.
thing when I'm using a vacuum pump, right?
Right.
Trying to work ahead here, guys, and get the next stage set up for us. That's it. Probably recognize the sound of a Lincoln Walker 2-ton floor jack rolling across the floor. Okay, where are we at? Remember, 12 minutes. I can't go over 12 minutes here.
21.6.
We're close. What do I know at this point, guys? If it stops here, I know it's a pretty small leak, but it's still a fail. This thing doesn't say, well, that's pretty close. We'll call it good. It's pass fail, line drawn in the sand, man. Simple as that.
Pass now.
Yeah,
I
pass
think
now.
it's good.
But that's just barely, guys. Remember, when I saw the numbers, it went up to 22.9, 23.5. I'm feeling pretty good. $24, man, this is looking good. 24 inches of mercury, guys. Sorry, I said it again, 24 millimeters of mercury, guys, equals 1 inch of mercury. Okay. So if you're comparing this to a vacuum gauge on a vehicle, we've just hit 1 inch of mercury. Yeah, what is it, 25.4? Isn't that right?
Yeah. Somewhere around there.
Didn't go
And
over
we're-
time, do we?
We're gonna what? Go over time? I don't think we've gone over time yet. Okay, so are we okay, guys? When we say that this is a pass, we are 5 millimeters, 6 millimeters of mercury over the line.
I would
Yeah.
say so, yeah.
So this thing will hit a peak number and stop, but we're just gonna go here. What did it say? 38 inches of mercury, and it just shuts the test off.
Yeah,
So
I think
I'm gonna hit continue. You guys hear what's going on now?
Yeah.
Purging.
The valve.
Purge valve clicking away, and look at my pressure drop, guys.
You got pressure now.
So we know that the vent valve is good because it's got atmospheric pressure in the tank then, and it'll drop back to atmospheric when this thing finishes purging down. Right? We
Right.
know that the purge valve is working. We know that this doesn't have a small leak nor a big leak for that matter. And I was able to verify it on the vehicle. And guys, I pushed a few buttons and learned the system. This is not hard to do. So we're gonna wait till it drops down. Guys, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go open the fuel cap right now. Here we go. What happened to my pressure?
Boom.
Went up.
Big time.
Yeah.
Drop.
So obviously the purge valve doesn't work nearly as fast as
Your vent valve, or not. your
as
vent
opening the
valve,
gas cap, right?
right?
Okay, shut that down. And it may just go and recheck our repeat reference pressure check. Okay, and we're rechecking the orifice here. All right. So what I want to, I realize I don't want to keep you guys here all day, and we will certainly do that if we, okay, so what I'm going to do here, guys, is I'm going to set up the smoke machine quickly. Go over a couple of steps that we might take and a couple of things that we could check. While I multitask my way out of here. So next thing to talk about is using our smoke machine. I'm going to say that our test failed. I'm going to say that we have a small leak on this vehicle. We have a code. I'm going to say that we just verified it. For doing the test that we just completed.
Okay.
Here's my smoke machine, guys. How does this thing work? I've got a flow gauge built into this. I'll grab something I can show this with you. I have a calibratable needle. This measures in liters per minute. And right at the bottom of this is a little ball, little black ball inside there. And as the flow increases, obviously the ball is going to climb up in my little flow meter here. And if I read the instructions in the book, which I've done many times, it tells me that a 2 thou hole is equal to 1 liter of air per minute. So I take my needle, move it to 1 liter of air per minute. This does slide up and down. So I just set it to there, and that gives me a visual go-no gauge. So if I connect this thing up, hook up my smoke, turn the machine on, and my flow meter jumps above, that's a fail. If it's below my red line, it's a pass. Remember, 0.4 is for older vehicles, probably pre-2000 type vehicles. So everything you're going to see is pretty much falling into the 0.2 category. Okay, so not all smoke machines have this feature. The ones that are specific for evaporative systems do. So if you got a smoke machine and it just pushes smoke, you don't know how much of a leak you have in the system. So anything I want to do on this before I get started, guys?
So basically, higher the number, bigger the leak.
The higher that flow gauge moves,
Yeah.
bigger the leak. Absolutely.
Test your gas cap.
Well, I can test the gas cap with this device, but at this point here, I'm going to say that my scenario is that I've got a P0456 small leak. I've verified the P0456 small leak doing the test procedure that I've just forced with the scanner, snap-on scanner. I've verified it. This vehicle has been into the shop before, and we have replaced the fuel cap in the past with a factory fuel cap. So what this tells me is, so far, I'm good to start testing. Would everybody agree? Am I missing anything? Okay. So again, what I need to do for this device to work, I'm going to try and hold my camera and everything at the same time, is I have a hose, which is connected to the machine itself, which I connect to the evap system on the vehicle. And I have my detonation trigger, right? So I push the button, and that should start the smoke process. Once I've connected us up to my battery, maybe that'll help. My power light is on, and I'm now going to push the detonation. Takes a minute to warm the machine up. You see the smoke now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yours is a lot stronger
And
than the
then-
one we have.
See the flow, sorry, say that again?
Yours is a lot stronger than the one we have at my work.
Okay,
Yeah, ours is really old. It's
okay.
still like a big metal box.
You guys see the flow gauge?
Yeah.
Okay, smoke. Flow gauge needle drops down. What am I doing right now, guys? I'm holding my finger over the end of it. I am
That's
testing my equipment.
Equipment.
Flow gauge is right at the very bottom. If I don't do this step, guys, and this thing's got a leak in it, could be a leak internally, I might be looking all over the place on a car for a leak that doesn't
Oh,
exist.
fuck.
Okay, so is that clear?
Yeah.
Up.
So what did we learn? What do I need to do on this vehicle to get us connected up?
That service port, by the, is it the purge valve?
I got to get under the vehicle.
Oh,
I just got to grab a stand and I got to block that valve off.
Gotta plug it.
Any
oh,
idea?
yeah.
Right. So I'm taking one for the team here. I'm going to crawl over the ground for you guys, get dirty. I'm not used to this anymore. The last time I did a ball joint, I cursed and swore. No, it was a CV boot I did. I cursed and swore for 2 hours. I got black grease on my fingers. It was gross.
You didn't wear gloves?
You know what? That grease they use on those things is designed to get everywhere. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
It's
it
like-
gets on your face.
it's like the glitter stuff that your kids may one day play with, right? One person plays with glitter, the shit's everywhere, or copper slip for that matter. Okay, I know I'm off camera, guys. You're gonna hear me grunting and groaning as I crawl under this vehicle, jack it up, get my stands in place, and then plug the line off. I can't plug that line off, guys, when I'm doing my evap testing, right? Not when the PCM is operating this setup. So any questions, guys? So fire some questions at me. Anything you want to see, anything not making sense. I mean, I'm hearing, from time to time, oh, I don't understand what's happening here. And I'm really appreciating you getting clarity and all that. Anything else you can think of? Fill the air with something wonderful other than me grunting and groaning as I'm jacking up this vehicle.
Breathe.
How can I test the purge solenoid?
Put it up. The smoke's going in.
Use a smoke machine? Cool. We should try that. I'm gonna get my cap on and then we will do just that.
What about vice grip with that rubber?
For the vent valve or for the
Just for the
purge valve?
piping, purge valve piping? No?
Try it.
Wait, if we run the engine and then there's no vacuum in the purge valve, that probably means that it's good, right?
Right. But that tells me that it's not leaking.
Yeah, it's not leaking, but
Yeah.
it doesn't tell me that it's opening or closing.
Right on.
Didn't we jump it?
Yeah. Another great idea. Almost there, guys. Thanks for your patience. All right, so I'm gonna bring you guys in a little bit closer. There's not many flat places on a engine bay.
Oh, wait a minute. You can take the hose off and check for suction.
Sure. So I could start the engine, and this is the hose that's going back to my canister. So I could start the engine and disconnect the hose and see that I have vacuum here. And that's a really important step, guys. If I don't have engine vacuum there, this thing could open and close, but it's not gonna purge. So that's a really good idea. I could disconnect the line that comes from my canister, put a vacuum gauge on top of here, bidirectionally control, and see that I get a vacuum reading. That'd be another great way to do it. Because what we need to understand here, guys, this is a really simple valve. It's either going to allow vacuum or block vacuum. So let's try something here. I've got another valve just because it's far easier than testing the one in the car. You guys might agree with me when you see it.
Where is the bottom hose connected to?
Let me get there in 2 seconds. Just gonna grab another jumper lead, guys.
Like he said, it connects to vacuum.
Oh,
Maybe to the intake.
a vacuum source. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, that bottom hose does connect to a vacuum source. So that's going to connect to my intake manifold in a place where it's going to evenly distribute the fuel laden air that's going to come out of it, right? So my line goes down here, gets a little hard to see, comes up over top, and then joins the intake manifold right there.
Okay.
Okay.
So right after the throttle body.
Right after the throttle plate, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gets manifold pressure. So hopefully this is going to work okay here, guys. I've got another vacuum switching valve. And first test is why don't I just put a vacuum pump on it? Test my equipment first.
Didn't we already kind of do that with the guided test?
Yeah, but I'm saying what I'm stating in this scenario is that we have a small leak.
Okay, so okay.
We
Yeah.
proved that the purge valve was capable of opening, but we didn't really prove. I'm saying we had a leak, and that's what I'm after here. So this is a great way to test it, is put a vacuum pump on the valve, test your equipment, and then pump it up. And this thing is holding vacuum, guys.
Yep.
I'll give you, go ahead.
No. Just say yes.
Okay. So there's my vacuum pump. What I can do next, guys, is I can connect this thing up. And by the way, if you don't have access to a vent valve through bidirectional controls, you know that you can power it up. Like what I'm doing right now is I'm just connecting this thing up to a power and ground source. And I'll show you my setup in a second. And watch my gauge. I open the valve by electrically connecting it to the battery. The fuse jumper lead, and you saw the vacuum drop off.
Then went back to 0, right?
Yeah. So I've checked the vacuum, the vacuum switching valve, or the purge valve in this case. I've put a vacuum on it. It held vacuum. I opened the valve electrically and the valve opened. So I'm not worried about this valve causing the issue that I'm having today.
Mhm.
Okay. So a way that you can test them on the bench or on the battery of a car, whichever. Straightforward. Did I lose anybody in this?
Good, good.
Good.
It's good.
I
So
have,
that was the vent valve we were checking?
it wouldn't matter actually.
Okay.
It could be a vent valve or it could be a purge valve.
Purge valve,
Sometimes
okay.
like on this vehicle, the vent valve is kind of built in and I don't have access to it. Some vehicles,
Right.
the vent valve is a separate unit and I could actually energize it and test it on the bench. Absolutely.
Okay.
So the difference is when I energize my vent valve, it's going to close the valve.
Right.
When I energize
Just
my
open it.
purge valve, it's going to open the valve. So I'm demonstrating on a vent, but as I say, or sorry, purge valve, but it wouldn't matter which one you were on.
Right.
So a couple scenarios I'm going to throw at you guys is I have in life options and I love having options, but sometimes understanding those options can be confusing. So what my next scenario for you guys is, well, look at that lovely little green cap there. Has anybody worked on a vehicle where you don't get the lovely little test port? I'm going to say you guys are all very blessed. So I have a test port. I have a test port adapter that screws in. And then I have my smoke line that comes from a machine. That is quite long. Should be able to reach over. And I simply connect this up. Now with my purge valve in place, if it's leaking, would I see the smoke?
Yes.
Yeah.
Probably, but where it's going to go is my intake manifold and then maybe back past my throttle plate and then start coming out the air box.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but it might not come out for a while. I might not notice anything right away.
Hey, sorry, the default position for this is closed, right?
Default position is closed. So if it's leaking, smoke will go past the valve.
Yeah.
And end up in my intake manifold.
Yep.
Okay. So this is one setup, guys. But what did I tell you about this setup that I've got right here? If I don't take that Schrader valve off, that's inside here,
Well, you won't have an accurate reading.
the reading will be fine, but the smoke might condense and I may not see the smoke filling the system. So if I'm going to use this test port, I'm going to take that Schrader valve out. Okay. Any tips on taking a Schrader valve out, guys?
Oh, press it first or purge? Yeah.
Yeah, you want to relieve the pressure inside, right?
Don't really care. Do you?
Left hand.
Huh?
Left hand.
Left hand. Nice. So I got to tighten it to remove it. This is
Oh, yeah,
plastic,
shit.
guys. If I turn it the wrong way, oh, it's not going. Give it a little bit more force. I'll break this thing, and then I've got to replace. Sometimes it comes with the whole line, and sometimes it comes with a filter on it as well. So remove this. What if I don't have this, guys? What if I don't have this lovely little Schrader valve here? What if it's not there?
And you disconnect it at the valve.
Go online.
I think
Use a T fitting, maybe.
you could tee it in, use a T fitting. But what I'm actually going to do right now, guys, and I need, because I'm going to say that I've tested. I'm going to, for simplicity's sakes right now, I'm going to put my Schrader valve back in. There's a couple things that happen here, guys, and this is important. This comes from being frustrated a number of times trying to find some of these leaks. If I remove the Schrader valve, smoke test this car, and there's no leaks, what does Toyota say?
Canister.
Replace the canister. So I replace
Yeah.
the canister, the car comes back 2 weeks later with a check engine light, same code. What do I do next?
Purge valve.
Well, yeah, I guess we're running out of things. Purge valve. I replaced the purge valve, same thing.
It's the
2 weeks
Schrader
later.
valve, isn't it?
The only thing we're not testing is the Schrader valve. We're removing it.
It's like on tires, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So remember that.
That should
So what I'm going to do here is this. I'm going to leave my Schrader valve in place. I'm going to even put the cap back on. You don't even have to put the cap back on if you're looking for smoke. And I'm going to disconnect the purge solenoid. Okay, remember, I'm not checking the purge solenoid when I disconnect it. I've got the line off. Everybody follow me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to connect my smoke machine rather than through the Schrader. I'm going to connect it
Right
directly here. Now I'm testing the Schrader valve.
Okay.
Okay. But I'm not testing
Purge valve.
purge valve.
I see.
But the purge valve is a whole lot easier to test than the Schrader valve, because how do I test the Schrader valve? I suppose I could take the line off and smoke that too. Whatever you decide, just remember what you're not testing when you're doing this stuff. So guys, I've got the cap, fuel cap is on this, sorry, the fuel cap is, the cap is blocking. I'm way too over time right now, guys. My brain is gone. I'm blocking my vent solenoid at the back of the vehicle with that rubber cap. Okay, my smoke machine is set up. I'm connected to everything but my purge solenoid. And I'm going to go and reconnect with my camera here. We okay with the view right now, guys? Can I swap this out?
Looking good.
Yep.
Go back to okay, it's just a refresher. There's my setup. We're connected up on the smoke machine. I'm going to hit the power button and I'm going to watch the needle. Now I've got to fill and pressurize the whole system to about 1/4 of a PSI. So we see our flow gauge dropping and dropping and dropping, right?
Mm-hmm.
At this point, we're still a fail, guys. Still a fail, but it's dropping. Remember, I tested my smoke machine already, right?
Yeah.
And we're just getting to 1 liter per minute down below. Guys, this is a pass. This is a pass. And not just a pass, guys, but that's a good pass, man. That ball has just found its seat. I am confident that this vehicle has no leak. Fair?
Yeah.
So, shall we create one?
Do those ever get corroded? Like, you can't
Um,
do it.
I'm
I mean,
gonna
it's
say,
cap, but
I'm going to say I've never seen it.
yeah. Okay.
So I'm still pass, guys, but I'd never let this car out of my shop. It's just too close.
You failed.
That's
And,
really
and there you go. And then it just jumped up above. And then I'm looking around for smoke. And I can smell it here, guys. I can see it. I can't see it well on the camera.
Yeah.
But I can. One of the other things that works, this smoke is UV dye. Okay. Ultra trace UV technology. So I can use a black light and the yellow glasses for this thing, and that'll just go, oh, jump right out at me.
I
Okay.
remember Herb saying that he doesn't like all that UV stuff, like when you put in oil and stuff to find leaks.
Can you guys see the smoke now? Oh, wait a sec.
A little bit.
I'm going to do something here. I'm going to switch back to, I can actually see it on the webcam. Can you guys see the
Yeah.
smoke there?
Yeah.
I can't see it on my iPhone, but I can see it on the webcam, which is kind of cool.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's like slow-mo.
It's like slow-mo. Well, because the camera's kind of slow-mo.
In bullet time, yo.
Okay, so again, if the leak was still not present, man, I'm going to the fuel cap area. I would see the leak around the fuel cap. Okay, I'll pop the fuel cap door open. You guys are on my mobile camera right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nice day out there.
Yeah.
So you can see my fuel cap there. I mean, I'm looking around here. It's tight. There's no smoke coming around the fuel cap. Obviously prime place to check. And got my setup underneath the car here. My jack stand is in place. You can see the cap that I put in. So my canister is sealed. That's the actual vacuum pump. This is the line coming from my fuel tank. This is my fuel tank vent line. This line over here is going up to the filter for the vent line filter, and then that line follows up towards the fuel filler cap. So yeah, that's the setup down here, but I'd be looking over here for smoke, guys. I'd be looking on top of the fuel tank, anywhere smoke is rolling out. And man, I don't mind leaving it sit on there for 20 minutes, half an hour if I have to. You might have to return your smoke machine on because it times out after a period of time. And just for interest's sake, I'm going to take my little cap off here. And it might take a while for smoke to start coming out of here because again, it's got a large volume of air to create the smoke in. And same thing, this camera does not show that smoke up well at all.
I have a question. Where you blocked it off, that's the vent valve, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Where is that 20 thou orifice?
That's
for the-
that's inside.
Oh, inside. Okay.
Inside in where the pump is here, it's inside. I don't have a cutaway one of these things, but I certainly think I'm going to be building a cutaway just so we can look at all the individual bits and pieces. The best I got is that cryptic drawing that came in the on that slide. So guys, that's smoke testing, man. It's not hard to do. You have to understand the system you're working on. You have to understand how to connect. But it really, I think, this is a super amazing opportunity to make tons and tons of money. Any questions?
Mhm.
I understand your feelings right now if you're a little overwhelmed with all this stuff, and I get it. I hope that you guys could be able to formulate questions. If there's something that's not clear, I'm happy to go over it and show you or get into more detail with any of the steps that we've done. We're looking at this vehicle because I have this vehicle, but honestly, guys, the procedure does not change. As far as smoke checking, I might have an easier vehicle to work on, smoke checking a car that allows me to control the vent valve through bidirectional controls. So this car doesn't let me do that, but it's learn the system, figure out how it works. Next one that rolls into your bay, it's going to be a whole lot easier, and you're not guessing.
Mm-hmm. We're sending it out.
Questions, guys? Anything coming up for you?
No, it all just seemed pretty straightforward to me. I mean, and I used to think it was a lot more complicated than just that. So
Cool. And that's truly what I want to hear is just, it's not complicated. It might take a while to assimilate all the information, but you're right. I mean, we're only playing with two valves, opening or closing one of two valves, or sometimes both at the same time or open at the same time, whatever the case may be, to create the conditions to discover where there's a leak. I think it's actually quite ingenious what the manufacturers come up with in ways to monitor this stuff.
I actually have a question.
Yeah.
Don't you have to check for electrical problems? Let's say you're diagnosing like a vent valve or something, but let's say it's not opening, but you would still have to diagnose if it's an electrical problem or like physically the valve is broken, right?
Great question. Awesome question. So one of the wonderful things about electrical issues, guys, is their circuits are very easy for the PCM to monitor. If there is an open in the electrical circuit, say the coil is no good inside my vent solenoid or my purge solenoid, I'll get a code. And the code will be an electrical code. And you know what? If I got an electrical code, I'm not going to waste my time hooking up a smoke machine to the car. I'm going to grab my meter and start testing. Cycle it off and on, and you could use an amp clamp. Cycle it off and on. You could listen to it, hear if it clicks. Bidirectional controls. Just like an injector, right?
So the scan tool will tell you if it's an electrical problem.
Let me change your words just slightly, but yes, the scanner will monitor all the electrical circuits in our vehicle, and will report codes for shorts to power, short to ground, or open circuit, and it'll tell me what it is.
Oh, okay.
Okay. The Toyota might give a VSV1 code. And I don't know, guys. I don't know. You've got me curious now. You've got me curious now.
Because let's say the connector was unplugged and you can't do the test, like the evap test, right?
Right. So I've done exactly what you're talking about. We're on the same wavelength here, because what I've done is I've just gone to the vehicle and I've disconnected the evap, the vacuum switching valve for the purge.
Yep.
And I'm going to get. So I guess, guys, what I'm going to state here is I don't know how long it's going to take to set the code, but right now I've got the connector disconnected. I got to get the key on.
doesn't it usually take like at least a couple drive cycles?
For electrical problems, no.
No?
And what I mean by that is maybe not. This is a continuously monitored system. So in other words, it's always looking for electrical problems. So if the electrical problem happens and it's intermittent and does it for a brief, millisecond or two, and then again later on, it may not set a code.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's consistent and it sees the issue for a period of a few minutes, it may set a code. So the other thing is we have check mode in Toyota, which is going to help here as well. So we'll go to code scan. I think I might regret that.
Yeah, usually that.
I
Yeah,
scanned the whole car.
the
Yeah,
thing.
I don't have 2 weeks here. It does. This car doesn't have anything on it really, but I'm going to
It
go to
still goes
engine.
through.
It doesn't have ABS. It's got an airbag module on it. Transmission, PCM. That's it. So I'm going to go to check codes only and just see what comes up. And what I'm expecting to see is a purge valve open circuit code. And I'm going to say current codes. ECT high. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I got to look into that code. That's interesting. That's my coolant temperature sensor.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean it's not in sync with the IAT? Or
Right. So that would be kind of an issue, wouldn't it? This test would never run if it had an ECT code, would it?
Mhm.
So that's kind of curious. I'm going to go to pending codes. No codes present. Guys, this thing is literally disconnected on the vehicle. I'm going to go to check mode. And I might have some work to do this afternoon on a coolant sensor on this car. And let's have a look now and see what we have. It's not setting a code. Okay, continue. And I want to go and I want to look at data. Because this is an actuator, guys, and not a sensor, because it's not, I haven't messed with the coolant sensor. I've got to look and see what's going on with that right now. But I have not done anything other than unplug. Looking at evap sensor data just to see what we've got here. So it's calling the evap switching valve. It's saying it's off right now. Vent valve is off. Coolant temperature is sitting at 60 Fahrenheit, which is about right. The car hasn't been run today. So I'm going to go exit out of here, guys. Normally I set this stuff up ahead of time and just kind of know what to expect and make sure that we're seeing some results rather than have to chase around. I'm going to go to actuator tests, and I'm going to try and turn the vacuum switching valve off and on for the purge valve. And it's possible, and it may be very probable, that Toyota is not monitoring this valve at all because it's not setting a code even in check mode. Now, obviously, this thing is not going to be clicking, but we'll see if commanding it off or on changes any of my test results. Let me go back in and check codes again. So Toyota does not monitor the electrical circuit for this purge valve at all. That's
Yeah.
really interesting and quite honestly, guys, really surprising. My 1980 or 1994 Chevy truck, if I disconnect the purge solenoid on that, it'll set a code. So kind of interesting. Where does that put us, guys? This thing would fail the purge test, wouldn't it? When it went to purge, the tank pressure wouldn't rise. Because if it's not monitoring it electrically, we're right back to where whoever started this conversation was around, well, what would happen if it failed that test? Well, if it failed that test, guys, I would need to test the valve to make sure that I command it off and on and feel the valve click. So in this case, failing that test means I have to check it electrically. And I'm gonna say, guys, I'm a little shocked. I'm kind of surprised. I said I've never tried this before in this vehicle, but this is really good to know. Part of this is learning the systems you're working on too.
But I guess you can like look at the numbers, like vacuum numbers, when you do the sections test, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The last test we did, it opened the purge valve and the tank pressure rose.
Yeah.
It wouldn't do that, right? So it would fail that part of the test. It would tell us that that's the system we need to look at.
Because I guess like if it doesn't have a code, it might let you go into the EVAP test it. Maybe, I'm not sure.
Sure it would.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's no code, then yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But if you look at the numbers, if it doesn't fluctuate, then you know something's up.
Right.
Yeah.
By the fact that when the tank pressure is dropped low and we cycle that valve and it doesn't change, first off, we'd notice the valve didn't click.
Yeah.
And again, now, you know, I've worked on these cars a few times, many times, but I know what that valve sounds like when it's working. I mean, I know that click, 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 click sound that I put my mic down and you guys could actually hear that operating. So I would know that this valve is not being activated.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's the valve itself or the signal to the valve, but that's pretty easy for me to figure out. I could do an ohm check, and you know, guys, I'm not crazy about ohm checking, but I could also do a quick amp clamp check on this with a lab scope. When it's cycling, guys, I should see current.
Yep.
Cycling off and on. So I could check to make sure the PCM is controlling it, whether it's got power or ground, whether the circuit's open. I could even take the valve off and feed the valve power and ground separately to verify that it's in fact working and it's the engine harness or the PCM.
Okay.
Awesome. Other thoughts, guys? Anything else you can think of?
No, not really at the moment.
Okay. Guys, it's been a longer day than I had hoped, but that's often what happens when we get out and just kind of do things live like this. Sometimes it takes longer than others. I hope you got something out of the afternoon, and truly, guys, don't be afraid of this stuff. This is not rocket science. It's not that hard to figure out once you understand the system you're dealing with. And we continue this conversation for another 3 weeks, guys. You know, this is not over until we feel good about it. So let it sit. Think about it. What are we doing tomorrow morning?
Starting class at 7:30.
Starting class at 7:30. Excellent. And what else are we doing tomorrow morning at 7:30?
Computer stuff.
Yeah, we're going to start on computers, and then we're going to look at engine management systems, and start pulling some more stuff together here. So I'll put an update on Moodle a little later. And you guys have a fantastic afternoon. If you have any questions, email me the question, and I can present something tomorrow with some forewarnment. I don't know that I won't have this car back here tomorrow. I'll be I'm going to have to give it back to my wife, but I can always bring it back in another day if there's something that's just killing you and we want to see again. Have a fantastic afternoon, guys. I'll hang out for a few minutes if you guys have any questions. For the rest of you guys, have a fantastic afternoon and pay attention to Moodle.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks,
care.
Andu.
Day.
You're welcome.
See you tomorrow.